Welcome back to Why We Nurse. I'm your host, Serena Tobar, and today we're exploring one of the most sacred and emotionally powerful roles in nursing, hospice care. I'm joined by Kristain McCluskey, a hospice nurse who walks alongside patients and families during some of life's most tender moments. In this episode, we'll talk about what it means to provide comfort at the end of life, how hospice nurses hold space for grief and love, and the lessons they carry from every bedside. Let's start with your journey. What led you to hospice nursing? Was there a moment or experience that drew you to this kind of care?
Yes. Actually, in my first year as a new nurse, I've been here 11 years. And my first year as a new grad, I got hired on in the critical care setting. And during that time is when I kept seeing like the older elderly patients who were total care. They had all the tubes, everything, everywhere, and they looked just really particular, super thin, and I just would go home feeling like I wasn't really helping them, and that I was actually kind of prolonging what I felt like suffering. It was at that time that I started wondering, like, is there another way to help these patients at the end of life? And I ended up actually moving to Hawaii, and they had an opening at a hospice there. And the hospital had rejected me there, and so I was thinking back to those patients who needed, I just felt like they weren't having any quality of life. And I was very curious to see how that would look differently in hospice. So I applied, and then here I am 11 years later doing hospice still. So it really does make a huge difference to have a hospice on board.
How did that previous experience in nursing help prepare you, or maybe not prepare you, for your hospice work?
I think because I kind of, my journey getting back into hospice over the years, doing hospice for 4 years, and then being back to do clinical care. I worked at MD Anderson, and there I saw the cancer patients who, the patients were at end of life, but they were in the hospital, so we can still getting chemo treatment, even if they were like the last stages, the last days. And doing critical care really helped me understand like the systems of the body and how I can better like manage symptoms at end of life, like recognizing cardiovascular disease versus like cervical cancer, for example. Experiences in critical care really helped me navigate and learn how to help manage the patient's symptoms so that it would be as comfortable as possible. Really trying to like manage like shortness of breath and just keep people comfortable. I think the knowledge and understanding on the floors in the hospital really helped me with my assessment and understanding why they have the symptoms versus just doing something because it's, what the doctor says, but being able to recognize that critical thinking aspect is something that I learned in critical care that really helped me take better care of my hospice patients. It can be so many different things going on that's affecting the patient, and not just one thing you have to really navigate all ends of the different body systems that might be having the patient discomfort.
Okay. And I'm sure it also kind of helped you like be able to translate some of that to the families, right? And kind of give them like, this is what's going on, and this is what to expect next, so that they can kind of also prepare themselves, right? Because yes, you want to be prepared, but I'm sure those families, they're anxious. Some of them may not understand what's going on, or what's going to happen, or how it's going to happen, and they may misinterpret some things that are going on with the patient, or their family members, right? Your patient, their
Yeah.
family member. And so it's kind of good to have those different backgrounds to help you kind of say, well, this is what's going on right now. Here's what we can expect next.
Yeah, as a hospice nurse, a lot of what we do isn't just, patient care, or we consider the family members and, what our friends might be involved. One of our patients as well. Because a lot of what we are doing is it's actually the family members who are taking care of the patient like at home. So we're teaching them, and I was a nurse educator for 2 years, and I'm finding that my experience as a nurse educator has really helped me with teaching family members and like the caregivers and even like the nurses at the facilities on how to take care of this patient. So it's really helped a lot to have different type of backgrounds, you know, to incorporate it with the family members too, because you're right, they do have a lot of questions, a lot of anxiety. A lot of what we do is reassurance. And your mom's on service because of COPD, so yes, she's gonna have shortness of breath. We're gonna have her on oxygen because hospice is able to have oxygen at home. We're gonna keep her on the oxygen because it's not comfortable to feel like you're out of breath. And then we're going to consider, you know, like breathing treatment, steroid, whatever, you know, the patient needs to help keep them, you know, they sort of manage. Telling the family like what to expect related to the diagnosis is a big part of what we do. So, you know, knowledge is power in a lot of ways that it helps them to like, okay, this is what's going on, this is how I can handle it.
Okay. How do you build trust with your patients and your families during this very vulnerable time?
A lot of it is, you know, a lot of it is listening, therapeutic communication, validating what they're going through, literally the hardest thing they've ever done, giving them like a safe space, like no judgment, you know, unless we're in a situation where there's something that's not safe for the patient, you know, we're not here to judge. We listen, we don't judge, right? It's a lot of
Right.
what we do is I remember myself that I'm a guest in their home. Like this is their home. And when I was new hospice nurse, I'll never forget, this is probably like 9 years ago now, we had a situation where we didn't necessarily agree with how they were living. And it was safe though, technically, we just didn't agree with the living arrangement. And our director of the hospice was like, basically she calls out, she's like, how dare you? And we're like, what? She's like, how dare you go to someone's home and tell them how to live? Like you are a guest in a house. Is the patient safe? Yes. Then yeah, that's just how it is. And they may be doing the stupidest thing you've ever seen, but that's their right. People have the right to be stupid. And I was like, okay. So yeah, I'm a guest. I go in, I listen, you know, it's important to consider like cultures too. Uh, cultures, especially here in Houston, we have a wide variety of all different types of cultures. So know how each culture reacts to death, talking about death, is it taboo, is it not taboo? Do you have to kind of ease into it, respecting that aspect of it too, knowing that you know, socially, just being very just respectful. We're not here to be a punching bag. I would never feel like, you know, we don't accept like verbal abuse, but sometimes people just words on it. It's important not to get personal. And once they calm down, like showing up with like curiosity and compassion versus like judgment or resentment and all like that. Like, hey, you're just yelling at me about A. How do you want to talk about it? And then that's how you kind of start those communications and following through. So, like always say, don't make promises you don't know you can't keep. Follow through is very important. Like if you tell them we're gonna have oxygen for your mom today, then it's real important to have oxygen for the mom today and make sure that those needs are met. So that's one of the biggest things is like, hey, we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna get you what you need, and then following through and keeping those promises. Keep your word that I'm gonna be there on Tuesday between 9 and 10. Then I'm gonna try my best to be there at Tuesday between 9 and 10. So keeping your word is one of the biggest things. Don't make promises you can't keep.
Yeah, it builds that trust. It builds that that commitment so they can say, I know I can count on Kristain because she said she's going to do it and she did it. And it's those little things, those little bitty things like I'm going to be there between 9 and 10 on Tuesday and making sure you're not getting there at 10:30.
Keep in traffic, keep calling, you communicate.
Right, or calling them, yes, and letting them know, hey, Houston traffic is trafficking today, as it does often. And so that you might be a little bit late. But yeah, what you said rings true through outpatient care, I think. Just no matter where you are, just being respectful
Or
and
just, yeah, not even just being a nurse, like walking down the street, going to Walmart, you know, I try to treat everybody like that. You know, I don't know, but it comes down to just be kind.
yeah,
Being
just be
kind
kind.
it goes very, very far, and you don't know what the story is. By the time they get to hospice, they've been told there's nothing else that can be done. You know, some of them feel like they're giving up. You know, I would say you're not giving up, you know, you're finding different ways. Maybe you haven't let go of some expectations and hopes, but you know, one at a time and kind of helping shape the, you know, the emotional side of it to accept, you know, what they're going through.
Right. And they're going through that Kubler-Ross that we learned about in nursing school, those stages of death and dying. Not only is the patient feeling some things emotionally, but so is the family. They're going through some stages, and one of those stages is anger. And so um it's so great that you are able to look at that and say, I know you're not angry at me. I know you've got some things going on and some things you need to express, but also knowing like I need to keep myself safe at the same time and provide a safe space for them to be able to express those things, but with the caveat that I have to be safe too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why hospice is very team oriented. That's one of my favorite things about hospice is like you're not always gonna have like a superstar team on the hospital unit. I've been lucky that most of the hospitals I worked at, uh, pretty much I have had good teams, but there's some stories where I haven't. And the hospice, you know, you don't just have the nurse, you have the CNAs who are CNAs are phenomenal. You know, they're very tender in their care. You have chaplains, and so they're able to provide that spiritual support. We have social workers. So a lot of times when you walk me through like a social situation, I'm like, this is out of my pay grade. We're gonna have to get a social worker up in here. And they can do their social working. And there's other team members too who play a part. We have nurse practitioners, we can get orders faster, and we do have the doctors who are very experienced. Um, the one thing that I really like about hospice too is like we're hospice staff are here because it's where we want to be. Sometimes is really challenging and it will push you out if it's not right for you. So the ones who stay longer than like the first year, it's because we love it. We love what we do. And so we all have like a passion for this service.
Wow. And I guess I didn't even realize that there's so many multidisciplinary team members within that hospice team caring for that hospice patient. That's really good to hear that you guys have all of that extra support and that it's not just you trying to take on all of those roles.
Yeah, it's very important. We have volunteers. Hospice started out originally as volunteers. So Medicare, I think it's Medicare, yeah, so it requires it to be like a certain percentage of the staff be volunteers because there's like a history behind it and also because uh, like it's going back to dying with dignity and not dying alone. You know, there is a loneliness epidemic, especially in the elderly. So we have people available who will just go sit and talk and like hang out with the elderly patients, like, or not even the older patients, but older who need, you know, that ear or that company that companionship that, you know, is becoming unfortunately more and more common, especially in our aging population.
Are you able to share a story or moment that deeply impacted you in your role?
So you gave us Kristain last week, and I've been sitting on it. Because in hospice, there's so many stories. Literally, so right now I'm just working on the weekend. My shift starts at 5 p.m. on Friday and stops 8 a.m. Monday. Some weekends I don't get more than 6 hours of sleep the whole weekend. And every single weekend since I started in May, I've had an experience that has impacted me. If I were to say, like, if one story was to really stick out to me, I'm going to go back to when I was originally starting hospice, my first round, just my second round back into hospice. I got out of it and I was saying the whole time, I'm probably going to go back at some point. Something maybe closer to retirement. Yet here I am. I actually, in hospice, Hawaii, I did it for 4 years. I did pediatric hospice care. And like, I still know all the kids that I took care of by name. And I also still know their faces. There was one family in particular that really just impacted me and changed me so much as a person. So being a hospice nurse at 25 years old, 24, definitely it changes the way you perceive just using everyday life. Like I'm not gonna freak out because a dish is what my dishes aren't done overnight. Because I know every day I go to work, I'm reminded you never know. You never know when someone close to you is gonna get that cancer that terminal cancer diagnosis. You never know, when your grandparents who have been perfectly healthy suddenly just hit that edge, you know. Seeing that be true in the pediatric population really affected me. I say, "God, it's pediatric hospital." I always get the same response. It's like, "Oh, God, how could you do that?" I don't think I could do it now. I am a mom, but that was right for that time in my life. Just one family where I actually was a nurse for almost 3 years because they ended up having two pediatric family members be on service with us. The first one was a 7-year-old boy with a genetic condition, and the mom, she could have skipped nursing school or just been a nurse because she knew every med, like why it was given, what time, like she had it all up on her story race board. She had a schedule and had it worked out with other families to come in and help relieve her. And this was all her planning and doing. And the husband was on hand and they knew exactly what type of treatment, how much to give. That boy never had a pressure injury the whole time. He was bedbound for multiple years. They were in there training him. And it was like so organized and she's so knowledgeable in this disease and everything around it. And I really think she had graduated high school. Like, I think she had later on gotten her GED. And I'm not saying like, I don't want to look at it, she's dumb and things. But the way she was speaking, it was, I would have believed she was a nurse. And because it was just the love for her child that she read about it and she taught herself that it was all self-learned. She learned about med populations because she was on drips at one point, and she had a manager at home, so she was doing all that. And then, we had him on service about a year, and I was the nurse for that. Unfortunately, in 6 months after that, they had to put baby brother on who's 16, and it was cancer. So I went from taking care of his son to taking care of her younger brother, and their family dynamics, the siblings were very, very close, and they had already experienced a death of a sibling. That was tragic. So just to see the family go through tragedy after traumatic, like tragedy after tragedy, and they were just still some of the best people I've ever met. They showed me how to handle trauma and grief with grace and dignity, and they didn't like laugh out and blame. Like there was no the anger they felt, it never seeped into meanness. Like they were still like some of the kind of people. And when the brother started to transition and was actually diagnosed last week, it was Friday, and I could tell it was going to be probably over the weekend. I paged my administration on call for the weekend. I said, "Hey, I know I'm sorry, but I want to be there." Family, I've been there step by step. They told me they want me there. I want to be there. I need to be there. And honestly, like not just for them, but for me, like my own closure. Because this was going to be, I had been on service with him, brother for about a year after that. So I wanted to be there. And so they did call me that Saturday morning, and I'll never forget being there. They were all surrounding him, his siblings, and last minute, one of the siblings asked for like a handprint or something. Like, they wanted to have something to remember that last moment before the mortuary picked him up. And in Hawaii, they also have like the rays, so they were also like putting the rays around him, and they didn't have any tape or anything. I went, said, "Hey, I got y'all." I went to the CVS down the road, paid for supplies, I got a canvas, and I went back to the house, and they didn't actually do like any hand plants, but just again. I will never forget seeing a mother have to let go of the child, and helping just the honor I felt in helping with the last bed bath and preparing the body for the morning. When I got there and putting him inside the van and watching the mom self to let go bag him.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is all so very emotionally intense. So how do you care for your own heart while you're doing this work, caring for others in this time?
I do have like my own I would say like almost like a ritual. Right now I'm on call, so the attachment isn't quite as intense as in case management. Case management is when they decided 8 to 5 to become your friend, and you're like family to them. So like for this example for that boy, I light a candle. I went home. I usually will do a bubble bath. For me, I also on my way home, the drive sometimes, especially the long way from Houston. Houston is an hour away from Houston. I will actually play some music. I do pray. I'm Christian, so I will say a prayer. If I'm at the death visit and I'm performing that last bit of care, I always make an effort to hold their hand and thank them for allowing me to honor, be with them, be the last moment. And then talking to my friend, I have a best friend who was who's the midwife, so she would talk about birth and I would talk about death. And it's an interesting dinner table conversation.
Balances it out, right?
Yeah. And so, talking to my best friends about it, cuddling my pets, and then appreciating life on my day to day. I feel like it's how I can honor families and patients and not, I don't want to waste any moment, like with my daughter, for example. When I get overwhelmed and like stressed out, being a single mom, I'm like, remind myself, like, hey, this is a small thing. She spilled her milk. Don't cry over spilled milk. And I do go to therapy, so that's a big part of it. A pet peeve of mine is when I tell people that I do hospice, because you gotta like, how do you protect your heart? And people are like, oh, I can't do hospice. Like, my heart is just too big. And I would be like, no, like, that means you would be perfect for hospice. Nobody wants a cold hearted ice cube hospice nurse. Dated, like, no, come in with your big heart. Yes, protect it. I think having a healthy understanding of death, like for yourself, is a big part of that being able to be like what I would consider a successful hospice nurse. Being a hospice nurse helped me process like death in my own life and just kind of come to terms with, unfortunately, after it's a part of life and it doesn't matter what age. So when it does become like too much, we go back to therapy. During COVID, for example, there's a lot of death during COVID. That was actually really hard because my heart is still hospice nurse heart, and so seeing patients die alone and in that kind of manner, I did become desensitized. And actually, a patient that who's in his last minute, with my hospice experience, the other nurses, especially the newer nurses, would pull me in and make sure, like, as the patients were actually dying, that, okay, are they comfortable? Is this how it's supposed to work? Do I need to give them more morphine and having them in? I was looking at the angel of death because every year I was going to these scenarios. The family had already left because they only allowed the 4 hours, and so I used the oxygen. Before COVID, I would have a process of like telling the patient, like I would start that process, like honoring that this was, help them, um, with the natural process of dying, taking out the oxygen, taking out their life support in a way. There's just 2 liters of oxygen that's full enough. And there's a new nurse, she's on orientation, a new grad, only been in there for like, 20 days at that point. It shocked her to see me just take off the oxygen like it was nothing. And I'll never forget her, like, sobs kind of dropping, and I was like, oh, like, I didn't communicate that that's what I was going to do in the process. So that made me realize, like, okay, I had desensitized to this. I need to start going to like therapy and, ask myself why. That was when I realized, trauma, and I stopped doing the rituals and stopped making it personal every time I experience a death with a patient. So that's one thing I do now is I keep it personal, but not too personal. You know what I mean? Because these are people who need help or they can't be healed. And when they get to hospice, they can feel like everybody else is giving up on them. So I kind of focus on I can help you, like through this. I'm your guide, just their guide almost to walk through this process, and that is very, very rewarding. And so I do find myself grieving, the loss, but also feeling very like that satisfied feeling that nurses get when we save a life. I get it. I feel like our like other will one of the most beautiful like I don't know how birth death can also be, not in all circumstances, but when it's that moment, like the other day we had a patient, she passed in her last minutes with her family surrounding her in prayer. And as soon as the prayer ended, I said, Amen, there's no future for Alaska.
Mhm.
And I get to hear these kind of stories all the time. Like hearing stories like, oh, I asked my mom to wait for me to get there. It's Friday. And I told her to wait for me until I got there on Sunday. And it was Sunday. And the daughter got to be there. And then the patient passed within minutes of the daughter being there. So hearing all those stories just helps me feel better about like death itself and handling it in my own personal life and just make life just feel so much sweeter and so much brighter.
Well, that's really a beautiful take. I mean, what you said about death can be beautiful too. It's true, right? I mean, and we when you really stop and think about it, nobody wants to die in some awful way. And if we do get the privilege to be able to have hospice care and that specialized transition, I think that that can be a beautiful thing, just like you said. And speaking on the pandemic, I mean, I think we all kind of went through a little bit of compassion fatigue because it was just so much all the time. And you being able to stop and say, no, this isn't right. This isn't how this should be. And I recognize in myself that I have stopped making this something where I'm doing my normal rituals, like you said, my rituals and my grieving, and these people were alone, and they went from living their life just normal to all of a sudden they're in a hospital alone with very, very minimal human contact, and it was very scary for them.
And the part that I think that got to me the hardest during COVID, as a hospice nurse, like I'm all about no one dying alone, like holding their hand and being surrounded by family. And I think it did break a part of me to see the patient dying alone in the hospital room. My hands through the 2 karat gloves being the only contact or calling, FaceTiming, I'll never forget, the patient was fine and then he started fasting and he was DNR, so we weren't going to intubate him. And getting his daughter on FaceTime through the iPad. I wanted to break all iPads at this point because I just felt like it was inhumane. And one of like one of the tragedies on COVID is not allowing family members into the hospital room and having her say goodbye to her dad through the iPad and her asking me to hold her dad's hand for like, I can handle that. I can't handle suffering. Is kind of what I was saying. And the anguish that I could see through the family and not being allowed in there. And, the anguish that I think I would be feeling if I was stuck in a hospital room by myself like that as the patient. Really appreciate the art of hospice so much more and what it offers and how it, if you're able to have the experience of hospice, it helps with the healing. A lot of family members, I see it touched them, like in their soul, in their heart when I say, so and so passed. There was no suffering. She died peacefully. She died with no pain. And the relief that I would feel the, the family is significant in that a huge part of their healing process where a couple of times if I knew that the patient had a little bit of pain or a little bit of discomfort in the last moment or you had to up their pain medicine, don't tell them that because I'm like, he got everything he needed in his last moment. He did find peace. And I think people actually pass with smiles on their face.
That is, they may have been able to get to opportunity to say goodbye to everybody they wanted to say goodbye to, and they've been able to make peace with what's next, and you were a part of helping them get to that point. So I could think, if I was able to say goodbye to my children and my loved ones and make peace and have somebody there telling me it's okay, you can go. I might go with a smile on my face too because I'm no longer afraid.
Yeah. And, whatever is on the other side, I personally believe it's, if we do the right thing, if we do the best we can, I see enough people pass this looking up with their arms reaching up to the sky and smiling up at whatever it is they're seeing. They say family members will come and visit. I definitely have people saying the day or like even like a couple of times weeks before they pass, oh, my mom is here, or like about husband or wife, if their wife or husband had passed before like 10 years ago, they'll be saying like, oh hey, so and so is here, and that tells me like I need to tell the family that if they're saying that, we need to start being ready, even if the patient seems totally fine, that there's something going on like spiritually that the family members are coming over to get the patient. I had a patient a couple of weeks ago say that they saw his cat. He had passed away like 12 years ago, and he kept saying the cat was like sitting in his lap and he was like trying to push his cat away. And I was like, okay, well, I hope if I don't get to hospice, then that I'll be able to say like, oh, my cats are here. That's how I want to
Yeah,
go
with
on
your
hospice
cats.
with morphine with my human cat, or human cat, with my live cat and my spirit cat all ready to usher me.
Kristen, what advice would you give nurses who are considering going into hospice or palliative care?
My first thing is to say, like, ask yourself, they need to ask why. And really ask, why do you want to do hospice? I mean, it's only like, why do you want to be a nurse? You want to be a nurse because you want to help people? Okay, you're probably in it for the right reason. Or if you're in it because you just like the paycheck, then you're not in it for the right reason. Since like that's a little bit more intense. Oh, I just want it for the Monday 8 to 5. I want to do the 8 to 5. No, it's not for you. It'll break you. If the nurse feels like they have to feel like they're healing, like they like the saving a life, they get the rest of feeling like they saved a life, and sorry, hospice is probably not going to be safe. If you struggle with yourself and like how you process your own personal beliefs around death and dying, if you're afraid of death, I might encourage you to get into hospice because I can't help people who are afraid of death not be so afraid of it, because like I said, I've seen people smiling. Whatever it is that they saw was good, and that made me less scared of death. But if you're too scared of death and you're around it all the time, then no, it's not for you. So ask yourself, why do you want to do hospice? Don't do it for the 8 to 5. Um, and then having the work-life balance is really important. You do the case logs, then at 5 p.m. turn off your phone and don't think about work until the next day. Like, you really have to have your boundaries, because it can become a lot. Doing case management in hospice, the patients are going to be there in the morning versus like when you clock in and out of the hospital. You go to the unit, you clock out, you do your job, and then you're done when you get home. And then, the next thing you might have completely new patients. Hospice is different. You're going to have the same problem. So being able to separate yourself, like, okay, yes, my patient is having a bad week. It's 5 p.m. I've done all I can today. I need to shut off and not answer my phone, because some people will use that little patients or families will call at 1 a.m. if you let them, so boundaries. Yeah, ask yourself why you want to do hospice, and then really focus on placing boundaries, healthy boundaries. Don't work on the weekends if you don't have to.
How is the role as a hospice nurse? How has it changed your perspective on nursing and even on life?
Hospice nursing is definitely my favorite out of all the nursing that I've done. I've done IMU, I did ICU, I floated to the ER, so I've done some ER shifts, I did some med-surg shifts, um, and with hospice, the satisfaction, really, like, that I get out of it is very fulfilling. And because of COVID, I was being capacity fatigue and I was being burned out. So I left bedside for a little bit, became a nurse educator, loved that, but it also wasn't fitting my personal life. So I made a decision to get back into hospice. And it has actually like I feel like I have every day I go to work, I have an impact. And I walk into a patient's house, I know that in that moment versus like in the hospital, the burnout is so real, our society as a whole right now. It's just really hard to breathe, and people become more agitated, more entitled, whatever. Workplace violence, for example, an issue too in the home care, but not as much. So I really have been able to reignite my passion for this and not hesitate a lot in my personal and in my work life. I found I do so love being in this.
That's so good to hear. And Kristain, I really want to thank you for your time and for what you do day in and day out. I mean, this is not a line of work that is for everybody. It's not an
It's
easy
not.
line of work.
It chooses us. Every nurse tends to find their niche. One of my best friends just realized making nursing pays. I could not do it. So I go to her and I'm like, how do you do it? How do you do what you do? I cannot imagine trying to be a NICU nurse and doing little needles and the little, no, she's like, I love it. I can't imagine anything else. And she comes to me and she's like, how do you do hospice? I'm like, I love it. Hospice, they wear things like, no, I love death. I love talking about death. It's not the best dinner conversation. People are like, oh, you're at a party and people ask you, oh, you do for work? Oh, I'm a nurse. Oh, so what kind of nurse you do? Hospice nurse. Oh.
Yeah, people kind of don't want to talk about it. It's a little taboo still, but it's important because when you need the hospice nurse, you need the hospice nurse.
We're running, people are like running away from us. We're like, no, let us love you. Let us help you. But we
Yes.
also, we know people need to come in their own time. Unfortunately, some of us do, and that's okay. I think the important thing that I love about hospice is we're all about like the patient's right to make their choices. That was one thing I noticed at MD Anderson or, the hospitals in general. They would still want to do treatment, and the patients wouldn't have all the information like, no, you're in stage. Yes, we can intubate you. Yes, we can do all these things, but just because we can doesn't mean we should. And that was one thing that I was talking about. But because we can do all these things, we can have you on a ventilator for the rest of your life, doesn't mean we should. If, you explain that to the people, you explain that to the patient, and they still want it, then okay, then that's what they want. So that's why it's important to have a conversation and you can start a conversation. And I have to say thank you for having me on because maybe it'll help someone start the conversation so that when it does come to you that you kind of know what you want and can make the choices like, no, I don't want to be on a ventilator long term. No, I don't want to be in bed. No, this isn't the quality of life that I want. Is there another option? Yeah.
Kristain, again, thank you so much for being with us today. And I just want to say, guys, hospice nurses, they remind us that nursing isn't just about healing. It's about presence. It's about dignity, compassion, and honoring the human experience in its final chapter. Kristain's story is a powerful reminder that even in moments of loss, there is love, connection, and grace. And that's why we nurse. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Why We Nurse. If it touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Follow at Why We Nurse on Instagram for updates behind the scenes content. Got a story to share or want to be a guest? Email me at whywenursepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, stay strong, stay compassionate, and remember why you nurse.